What's going on, everyone? We hope you had a great weekend and are ready for another exciting week in the markets. There's a lot going on right now, and it should make for some pretty awesome movement this week. Trump is expected to initiate his widest tariff so far. We have a lot more big earnings reports on the schedule. We have a very important AI summit in Paris tomorrow. And on top of that, it's Super Bowl Sunday, so we have some more Super Bowl related stock market stats for everyone. But Friday was definitely a little bit of a bearish day, Tom.
Yeah, it definitely was. 73% of the S&P 500 closed down in the red, and we can go to a lot of the bigger tech stocks, Mike, and it was not looking good. I mean, Amazon down over 4%, Tesla down over 3%, Google down over 3%, Microsoft in the red, Apple down over 2%. Nvidia was kind of like the saving grace, but it was only up by 0.9%. So really nothing going on there. You guys can tell though it was a pretty bloody day in the markets, and like you said, we're going into the Super Bowl. We do have some good stats. We talked about this a little bit last week, Mike, but I want you guys to go ahead and comment in the comments below, which team do you like for the Super Bowl here? I'm going with the Eagles myself, but hey, it looks like the stock market likes the Chiefs.
No, Tom, no. You can't go with the Eagles. Look what happens in the past when Philadelphia has won. Bad things happen, and some really bad things. But looking at some stocks that are related to this, I know that there are a lot of eyes on DraftKings right now. Of course, they have a lot to gain, not only on a huge wagering day like the Super Bowl, but just in general, sports betting has been growing quite a bit. And DraftKings is at the point right now where they've been consolidating for quite a bit, and they do report earnings this week as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a big report. You guys can see here on the earnings calendar, they actually report on Thursday in after hours, along with Coinbase, Twilio, and a few others. And go ahead and screenshot the earnings calendar. Of course, there's a lot of earnings, and we'll even talk about them a little bit more, Mike. But something that is kind of worrying for me with DraftKings earnings is that we are seeing a lot of these different websites start to come out, like Polymarket and Kalshi and some of these other websites where they're not technically sports betting websites. So, they're swaps, it's like contract swaps, so technically they're actually able to get around regulators with this, and this could end up eating into maybe some of DraftKings profits from the Super Bowl or just some of that overall market share. And looking at Polymarket right now, these are the odds. They're giving the Chiefs obviously the I would say the advantage here at 52%, and it looks like that they're pricing in a 48% chance that the Eagles win. So hey, that's kind of what the market's pricing in right now for the odds here.
Yeah, no doubt. So prediction markets have been growing quite a bit. It definitely does present a risk for companies like DraftKings, but even Flutter, which is the parent company for FanDuel, which is ticker symbol FLUT. Either way, keep a close eye on FLUT and DKNG this week, as it is pretty big for just their business in general. And like we said, DraftKings does report earnings on Thursday as well. So keep these ones close on watch. But I know a big thing that will be on top of a lot of traders' minds this week, Tom, is Trump and tariffs once again. And it looks like this week we are set to see some of the widest sweeping tariffs we've seen yet.
Yeah, we definitely are, Mike. It looks like they're talking about reciprocal tariffs, which is a terrible thing to hear. Now, I will say it kind of makes sense, right? So what they're going to be doing with these reciprocal tariffs is essentially anybody that is tariffing the United States, we're going to tariff them right back, and pretty much for the same amount. So, like, hey, if they tariff our cars at 20%, we're going to tariff their cars at 20%. Trump's actually said it's like an eye for an eye in a way, and it does make sense. If they're able to tariff us, why don't we tariff them? Maybe there's an argument there. Let me know in the comments down below if you think that maybe this shouldn't happen. And of course, I'm sure that there are a lot of traders out there, Mike, that don't want this to happen because it's causing a lot of volatility in the stock market. And these tariffs are going to be even more on the forefront this week because of all these big earnings. And you can see here that the amount of S&P 500 members talking about tariffs on their earnings calls has been skyrocketing in the short term. So these companies think that tariffs are extremely important, obviously.
No doubt. And, last week, the market was definitely selling off in a pretty intense and consistent way as we saw a strong gap down on Monday. But the news that completely turned the trend around was when we reached a deal with Mexico shortly after open on Monday. And then after that news happened, we saw a little bit of recovery throughout the rest of the week. But, tariff news is extremely important for the market. And I would say that it has been having the strongest effects on the market, not only over the past week or so, but even throughout history. Even in 2018, when the tariff problem got really bad with China, the market sold off more during that time than it did in any other point in recent history at that time. So keep that in mind. Tariff news is extremely important, and we're set to have a pretty big update related to that with those reciprocal tariffs on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we're going to hear a lot more about tariffs in general just over the next couple weeks and couple of months, and we've been talking about that a lot. Keep watching for the Trump news. Keep your eyes on Truth Social, where Trump is always posting. We're seeing a lot of updates there, and of course, check out the Stocked Up Discord. We're always seeing good updates and things like that in the Discord as well. But Mike, I know as far as tariffs go and everything like that, how worried are you about, let's say China stocks with some of these tariffs? I will say, last week, I was pretty surprised to see BABA and a lot of these China stocks soar up and break some of these recent highs. It seems like they're kind of shrugging this off.
Yeah, that's the thing, because with this tariff news, we go in these very intense trends in both directions where, when there's positive perception of the tariff news, we could see, let's say China stocks, move up in a very strong way, but as soon as the narrative surrounding the event shifts, it's the same exact thing, just in the other direction. And the same thing applies for just the broader market in general as well. We go through these cycles where it's okay, people, they're happy with the tariff news and everyone's just buying in after each other, and it just accelerates the uptrend, and then the narrative switches and then everyone starts to sell, and it just, keeps repeating and flipping. So, the way I look at it right now is that we are in such a news driven market where it's really just about following that trend in a risk protected way, and really just following the money and just constantly adapting with the market as new news and information comes out. But yeah, it should be a very big week in multiple different senses.
And I feel like the news with Trump really just never stops, Mike. And there's actually an AI summit going on where JD Vance is going to be traveling to Paris. And this is going to be a 2-day summit. And there's going to be a lot of big players here, Mike. I mean, we're talking about the CEO of Google, Sam Altman, Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, along with a lot of other people like the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. It's hosted by the French president and the Prime Minister of India. So this is going to be a huge event, Mike, where a lot of big players are going to be getting and talking together. They actually said it's unclear if Elon Musk will attend. I mean, I would think with how many big players are going to be there, maybe he would go, maybe not, but I'm sure that we'll hear something about his posts on Twitter about it or something like that at minimum. But definitely be ready for this AI event. We've been hearing so much about AI and everything like that in general, and to see all these CEOs and everything like this getting together in one place, it's definitely going to make some headlines on Monday and Tuesday. And I did see that the CEOs and leaders are expected to give speeches at Tuesday's closing session. So keep that in mind. Tuesday around the end of the day is where we might start to see a lot of this start to play out.
Man, we have a crazy week ahead of us. We have this giant AI summit, we have the reciprocal Trump tariffs, and then we have a lot on the schedule as well. The big man, Jerome Powell, has some screen time this week, Tom. What's going on there?
Yeah, he's doing his semi-annual monetary policy report to Congress on Tuesday and Wednesday, and it starts at 10 a.m. on both days. He's going to be testifying. So on Tuesday here, it'll be to the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, and then on Wednesday, it'll be to the House Financial Services Committee. So, and what they're going to be doing is essentially asking Powell questions. And Mike, we've seen some funny stuff in the past. I mean, I've seen Elizabeth Warren grill him and, him give some snarky responses. I've seen him get snarky with a few other people. There's been some funny questions asked. There's been some serious ones. So definitely expect some headlines from this. And I would expect to hear a lot about inflation and their plans going forward.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, when Jerome Powell speaks, you have to listen. He is the most influential man when it comes to the stock market. He's the chairman of the Federal Reserve, so what he says is very important. Tuesday and Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time is the time to watch. And then looking at the schedule for the week, we do have important inflation data set to release 1 hour before open on Wednesday, so definitely keep that in mind. And then we have some PPI data on Thursday, also 1 hour before the market opens. So keep these events close on watch. But Tom, looking at SPY right now, we definitely saw some decent selling pressure come into play on Friday. What are the most important levels and analysis heading into tomorrow?
Yeah, we're sitting right around $600 once again, and $599 to $600 is going to be a major support to watch this week as SPY falls down. We've seen a lot of touches and bounces off of this $599 to $600 range plenty of times in the past, so definitely have your eyes on $600. And Mike, we talked about the potential of these lower highs starting to form last week, and unfortunately on Friday, we did start to see that play out. So now in the short term, I am a little bit worried that we're going to keep seeing this overall downtrend continue. You know, you can see the last time that we started to see these big drops, the SPY fell down to around the 590 mark. I think a lot of traders are going to be targeting that recent low as the SPY starts to drop, but there are some big supports along the way. Like, I really do like 598.50 to 599 once $600 breaks, and then even under there, I really like 596, which is where we saw a few different bounces last week before we were at that 590 mark. So there's a few levels to watch for if the SPY starts to sell off a little bit. If it starts to rise, I really like 603 as a solid resistance in the short term. But the overall thing with the price action right now, Mike, is just seeing these lower highs continue to come in.
Yeah, and it's not a good sign because it shows that sellers are definitely defending, these upper resistance levels in a pretty strong way. And, it's something that you definitely don't want to see if you're a bull. Of course, the market is, been strong in a broader sense, but this recent selling is something that shouldn't be ignored. And I don't like how we're getting right back down to that $600 level again because, we bounced off of this recently in like a pretty strong way. And to see us right back at it again is certainly not something you want to see.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think come Monday, if we start to see a big gap down or a big drop down under here, that is going to be a big concern. And I think that there's a lot of people talking about these reciprocal tariffs and everything that's going to be hitting early this week. Maybe there'll be some positivity from the AI event as well. There's so many things going on at once, Mike. We're going to be seeing so many things happening early on in the week that it could influence SPY's price action in a pretty crazy way. But if we start to really break under 600, it's not going to be good in the short term, that's for sure.
Yeah, we are in a news-driven market right now. So throughout these next couple of days especially, pay attention to the news. The Trump reciprocal tariff news is extremely important. The Jerome Powell testimonies are extremely important, as well as this AI Action Summit event. All very, very important, and they all will move the markets quite a bit. So definitely pay attention to the news this week. But besides that, Tom, we are all set and ready to get into some setups and predictions. A stock that is close on my radar right now is Amazon, and it is to the downside. They have been relatively weak in the short term. They reported earnings last week and moved lower, and their price action on Friday was not great. At the same time, they are still very close to all-time highs, right around $240 a share, and we are just starting to see more and more profit-taking come into play. This one is definitely on my bearish radar, especially if we see a break below that $228 level.
Yeah, that's a big low from Friday. If that starts to break, I'll definitely watch it down as well. I don't like how they had that negative move with earnings, and I'm also watching for an earnings continuation to the downside. There's been a lot of these good earnings continuations moves in the short term. With my first setup, I'm watching Tesla to the downside as well. Poor Tesla here actually broke under the key 360 support in after hours on Friday. You can see in after hours, it started selling off in a pretty massive way and was selling off all day Friday, as many tech stocks were. But going over to the Bookmap, 360 was pretty major. There was like 178,000 shares stacked up right there. So to see that give out, that's a big sign in my book. Now, for this week, I'm going to be watching for a drop under 3 355 and a move down towards the next major support, which is 350, where we saw 188,000 shares stacked up around the end of the day Friday. So I'll definitely be watching for 350 support to be tested soon as Tesla drops, and I think that you could play it down with 350 as a good target. So that's kind of what I'm watching for this week, but I really do want to see 355 break down.
All right, sounds good. So I will definitely keep a close eye on 350 and 355. As you mentioned, there are definitely some buy walls stacked up there, but Tesla is moving with some pretty strong momentum. So sounds good there. Another stock that is close on my radar is HIMS, but it is to the downside. This stock has been crushing it over the past year and especially over the past few weeks. And I feel like they are now getting to the point where they are just so overextended, where it's getting harder and harder for them to rise. They had a great day on Friday. But they rejected pretty hard like throughout the second half of the day, where like most of the selling pressure came in, and I did not like how this stock closed, as more and more sellers were getting like pretty aggressive with their fills. So either way, HIMS is definitely on my bearish radar. The more pressure this puts on its lows, the better the setup becomes. But at the same time, if we do see a break of the highs, then it's not really worth fighting that sort of price action for the time being.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was a really negative close on Friday there. And like if HIMS would have actually held its ground and like closed around 44, I would have been a lot more confident with it to the upside. But with the way it closed there, that was a pretty rough little drop. I'll definitely be watching it down as well. With my next setup, I'm looking at Uber to the upside. And Mike, we have some news with Bill Ackman buying up some Uber. I thought this was pretty cool. He ended up buying 33.3 million shares, which is a pretty big number. And there was a lot of positivity that he said on this tweet with Uber. I mean, I thought that this was a pretty big quote, Mike. We believe that Uber is one of the best managed and highest quality businesses in the world. Remarkably, it can still be purchased at a massive discount to its intrinsic value. So I thought that was a big thing, saying that it's one of the best managed and highest quality businesses in the world from Bill Ackman. Now, I will say he did just buy 33 million shares, so of course he's going to say that, right? But either way, I thought this was pretty big, Mike, and I'm definitely going to be watching Uber to the upside, and it's more of like a news-driven hype scenario, and Uber saw a lot of good momentum off this Friday. It was up over 6.5%, and if it essentially breaks its high of day Friday around 77, keep watching it up.
Yeah, definitely. This stock was moving with some pretty awesome momentum, not only on Friday, but even Thursday. And Uber is one of those stocks where, like, when it has momentum, it has the ability to move in a pretty strong way, as we've seen. But throughout history, it has had some pretty good, strong, long-lasting moves. So I will definitely keep it on my radar as well. But besides that, Tom, we are all set for today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have BBAI to the upside.
Big Bear AI continued to blast off on Friday. If they can break out above $9.30 right at that high of day, then keep watching them up. And even in after hours, they held up pretty well.
Sounds good. With the next one, we have Oklo also to the upside.
Oklo, if they can break out above $56.50, keep watching them up as well. They were up 16% Friday. And if you want to be extra safe with it, you could just say make it break $60.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Google, but to the downside.
Poor Google. That was a bad turnaround Friday. If they end up breaking under 183 right around the low of day, then keep watching Google down. They were actually down over 3%, which is pretty nasty. And there was a lot of tech stocks on the heat map that were down over 3% as well.
Yeah, over 73% of the S&P 500 actually fell down in the red on Friday, and big tech played a major role into that. So either way, keep a close eye on Google to the downside and OKLO and BBAI on in an upward sense. But either way, these three stocks are momentum style setups, so the stronger and more consistent these stocks move, the better these setups become. As always, have stop losses to protect yourself, like with every other type of trade, and adjust and flow with the trend changes as they happen. But besides that, Tom, it is now about that time for today's $335,000 big money trade, and we are looking at ticker symbol PTGX. On Friday, the big money bought the 45 strike calls that expire on April 17th of 2025. For my advanced traders out there, they also shorted the 60 strike calls to make this a call debit spread, but this is a bullish trade where they want the stock to go up. PTGX is a biopharmaceutical company, so they move quite a bit based off like FDA drug approvals, progress updates related to their treatments, and anything in that anything related to that. Looking at PTGX, it has been uptrending in a pretty strong way, at least in the short term, which is good. Over the past like few weeks or so, it definitely has been dipping, but this big money trade I think is very interesting in multiple different senses. The big money's risking around $335,000 to make like $1.17 million, which is, a great reward to risk skew there. And companies like this one definitely move a lot based off like FDA approvals, like I said. So definitely keep it on watch.
Yeah, like maybe these big money players know something that we don't, and we might start to see like a big move with PTGX. Every once in a while with these like pharma or therapeutics companies, we start to see some pretty insane price action on like some release or something like that after the big money plays are announced. Now, of course, that's not going to happen every time, but that is something that that I really like to look for with these pharma stocks, obviously, since they're just so news driven, I guess I would say. But overall, I do like support down here as well, around $33. The 45 strike does seem a little far out of the money, so that does scare me a little bit. I always get a little worried whenever they're that far out.
No doubt. So it's definitely a high risk, high reward for multiple different reasons, but definitely worth keeping on the radar. But as we look at everything this week, Tom, there should be some pretty good moves in, both directions and in multiple different senses. Of course, we have a giant earnings lineup. There's a lot of stocks that are already at some pretty crazy points, whether you're looking at Oklo, Hims, Palantir, Nvidia, or quite frankly, anything else. Of course, the big events to start out the week, like the AI Summit, Trump tariff news, and Jerome Powell testimonies will move the markets quite a bit, so definitely keep your eyes open for that. We should see some pretty good movement, and if you guys are new to the channel, consider obliterating that subscribe button to get our videos recommended to you more often. Basically, we cover everything you have to know about the market, like important events, big earnings, charts you never would have otherwise seen before, key setups to keep on your radar, big money plays, and so much more. Every single day. When you subscribe, you'll get our videos recommended to you more often, so definitely consider doing that. But we also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Rick Traff in the StockedUp Discord, who had a great post with some SPX options on Friday. So huge shout out to you, and great profits there. Keep on rolling. It's awesome to see screenshots like this one. But besides that, thank you all so much for watching, and let's crush it in the market this week.